Last but certainly not least, we have 4c. The reason I put this on the test was because some of you are still having a very difficult time understanding fractions and what fractions are. So I'm going to slowly go through this and explain several things to you. The first thing that you need to understand is to be able to work with fractions, we want to make sure we have common denominators. And so we're going to create common denominators all the way across the board for both of these equations. All right? The next thing I want you to understand is that a fraction is a division problem. And so always treat this fraction as though it's x divided by 3, y divided by 4. Cool? Think of it that way in your mind. You don't have to write it down that way, but think of it that way in your mind. Okay, here we go. I recognize that 12 is common to both 4 and 3. So I'm going to create a common denominator of 12. It's difficult to know what to write if I don't have a place to write it. So the first thing I do is I create the structure of this thing. I already know I have a 12 here, so I'm not going to change that one at all. 3 times 4 gives me this 12 down here. And since I multiplied 3 by 4 to get 12, I have to multiply the top of it to get 12 as well. So I have to multiply this by 4. So I just write 4 times x. Some of you are having difficulty understanding that 4x means 4 times x. 4x doesn't mean 4 plus x, it means 4 times x. 4 times 3 is 12. So to get this 12, I had to multiply that denominator by 3. So I have to multiply the numerator by 3. That gives me 3y. Okay. The really cool thing about this is that now that I have a common denominator here, this gives me 4x plus 3y all over 12 equals 19 over 12. And now I can do something almost magical. I just multiply both sides of this equation by 12. Well, 12, see that 12 divided by 1, that's a fraction multiplied by a fraction, and I'm going to simplify first. 12 divided by 12 is simply 1. And so I eliminate those things, and I have 4x plus 3y is equal to 19. Another way of looking at it is, if this side is divided by 12 and this side is divided by 12, the numerators must be the same if they're equal. Okay? This side divided by 12 being equal to this side divided by 12 means that the numerators have to be equal as well. So I can just eliminate those numerators and work with the top. Let's do that with this one. I recognize that there's a common denominator of 80. So I'm just going to write that. And I have to write in my denominators here. Just like that. 2 times 40 is 80, so I'm going to multiply x by 40. 5 times, gosh, I have to think about it. 5 times 2 is 10, and 10 goes into 80 8 times. So 8 times 2 is 16. I have to multiply 5 by 16 to get 80, so I have to multiply 16 by the top as well. Once again, all of these are being divided by 80, so that means that 40x minus 16y is equal to a negative 63. It's that simple. All right? Now I've got these two equations that I'm working with, and I recognize something almost right off the bat. 4 and 40 have a common factor of 40. So that's pretty cool. I can simply multiply this equation here by a negative 10, and that negative 10 multiplied by this 4x will give me a minus 40x here, which is the opposite of this, which will eliminate that 40x. So negative 10 times 4x is a negative 40x. Negative 10 times 3 is a negative 30y. Negative 10 times 19 is a negative 190. 40x plus a negative 40x. Remember, we're adding here. Okay, 40x plus a negative 40x is 0. That goes away. Negative 16y minus 30y. Now I have a lot of people who are coming up with the value of 14 here. But let's look at this on a number line. If I start at a negative 16 and I have negative 16 y's and I subtract 30 more y's, I'm going to go this direction, 30 more, which is essentially 30 plus 16, but it's in the negative direction. So this is a negative 46y. The same thing applies with this. I'm starting at a negative 63 and going in a negative direction another 190. So that's the same thing as 190 plus 63, but it's negative. 190 plus 63 is the same thing as 200 plus 53. So I have negative 253. Well, that looks kind of ugly, but if I go back and check my math, I've done it correctly, so I stick with it. Don't let it scare you that they're big numbers and they're negative and they don't match very well and they're odd and all that kind of thing. If I divide both sides by a negative 46, just like everything else I've done, I get y, right, we'll just go right up here, equals a negative 253 divided by a negative 46. Oh, my mind wants to just stop when I see that. But if I cover that up, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. Okay, that's good. So this is going to be positive. And 253 divided by 46, ugh. Well, I know that 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I don't know what this is divisible by. So I'm just going to leave it for now. Okay. But that means I now have to solve for x by putting this in for y. And that's really a pain. All right? That's hard. That's hard. So instead, I'm going to do something completely different. I'm going to use process of elimination again, only this time instead of eliminating the x like this, I'm going to eliminate the y. So let's write these equations again. Only this time, let's eliminate the y values. Here we go. We have 4x plus 3y equals 19. And we have 40x minus 16y equals negative 63. That still looks confusing and frustrating, right? Well, let's look at it. I have to eliminate the y, and I have a 3 here and a 16 here. This is positive and this is negative. So they're already opposite signs. Now I have to just figure out how to get them to eliminate each other. Well, it's a little easier than we think. If I multiply this side by 16 and that side by 3, that'll make the y's equal. Okay? So that side I'm going to multiply by 16, and that side I'm going to multiply by 3. 16 times 4 is 64. 16 times 3 is 48. 16 times 19, I don't like that very much, so I'm just going to write 16 times 19 and wait for another step to think about it. Sometimes we try to do too much, but I recognize that in the future I'm going to have to work with this anyway, and maybe if I leave it like this, I'll have some stuff I can eliminate later. I don't know, but I just leave it like this, so I don't have to think about it just yet. Now let's look at this one. 3 times 40 is 120x. 3 times a negative 16 is a negative 48y. Oh yeah, that's why we did that. 3 times 63 is a little more difficult, but let me stop and think about it. 60 times 3 is 180. And 3 times 3 is 9, so that's 189, and it's negative. Okay, I can handle that. I can see right now I'm going to have to write this out. So let's do 19 times 16. 6 times 9 is 54. 11, 19, 4, 10, 304. And if you couldn't keep up with that, that's okay. Pause the video and just look at this and work your way through it. You might find that I made a mistake. I don't know. So I'm going to just put right above here 304. Is it positive or negative? It's positive. Positive and positive. Okay. If I add these together, I get 184x. Those go away. Equals 304 plus a negative 189? Ugh, 304. That Mr. Rob, he's not very nice. Minus 189. I'm testing your ability to do these things that you've known how to do but forgotten how to do. And you can't forget because it's going to keep coming back. So, that's 115. If I divide by 184, both sides, I get x equals 115 divided by 184. Ugh, well that doesn't look very fun either. But I have two values for y. So we have these two values that look really, really confusing. 115 over 84 and 253 over 46. Now I accept either one of those. Those are just fine. But when you start to reduce these fractions, you start to recognize that they're divisible by certain things. I actually did the division here, and you eventually find out that this comes out to 5.5. Okay, and I did the division here, and I discovered that this comes out to 5/8. This isn't one that I expected you to be able to get. Okay, it wasn't one that I expected you to necessarily get all the way to the end of. However, you will recognize that everything we did here is something that you knew how to do. It's just that you weren't sure how to put it all together. So go through this a few times and take a look at it, a pretty hard look at it, and see where you go from there.